Welcome back, and a very special welcome for the first time to these shows. Nicole Neily, a woman that I've encountered now on a couple of occasions. She is the founder and president of an impressive outfit called Parents Defending Education. She comes to it from experience with Independent Women's Forum and the Cato Institute, and is a driving force, I think it's fair to say, at this point, in trying to expose what she calls activists' agendas that are harming the kind of education our kids are getting, particularly, but not exclusively, I'm sorry to say, in government schools. Nicole, welcome. It's great to have you with us, and thank you for taking a few minutes to tell us about what your group, Parents Defending Education, is about and why it's so needed at a time such as this.
Well, thank you for having me. It has been a very interesting fight since our launch about 4 years ago. We launched in the wake of COVID with school closures. If you think back to then, many parents were really shocked when they suddenly had a window into what their children were learning in school because Zoom school suddenly was in people's living rooms. And people were shocked both by what their children were learning and, frankly, by what they were not learning. And then, you think through 2021. In the wake of George Floyd, a lot of schools really invested very heavily. And I think at that point, kind of the mask sort of slipped into a lot of the social justice and anti-racism work that schools had been doing. So we heard from a lot of parents through our tip line, which we had from our launch, and we have been receiving about 50 to 200 tips a week from across the country. So truly an astonishing volume of material, covering everything from racial discrimination, privilege walks, things like that. Then fast forward to 2022, a lot of gender activism driven largely by the Biden administration's push to rewrite Title IX and define the meaning of the word sex. And then up through over this past year with the anti-Semitism that we saw unleashed in the wake of the October 7th attacks. But truly, it has been really just surprising me. And I remember thinking back to when I first came to Washington and thinking, school choice good, teachers unions bad. And it turns out that the education industrial complex is just as big and just as overwhelming and full of very, dangerous, I think, activists, as you alluded to, that are trying to use our money against us to take our children and enlist them as little child soldiers in their ideological war against the West. And so it's really a frightening thing. And it's something that we have been able and honored to play a small part in fighting alongside to expose what's taking place in these schools behind closed doors.
Yeah, well, thank you for all of that. So, is this last comment a critique of what's being done in the name of school choice?
No, no, no. This is not a critique in what has been done. No, just in general, that this is so much more complicated. I mean, we have even seen in charter schools how they have started to become hijacked. I look at places like KIPP that got rid of their slogan, work hard, be nice, because work hard was considered white supremacy. I mean, it's like we have gone through the looking glass in some of these things. And so it really reminds me of that phrase, the price of liberty is eternal vigilance, where just because you live in a red state, just because you send your child to a private school, it does not mean that they are immunized from any of these problems. And that we really do, it is incumbent on all of us as parents, as well as just citizens, to be aware of how our money is being used and what our children are learning on a daily basis.
Yeah. I asked about school choice because, as an example of the abuse, I think, of the charter school option, we've been talking a lot about Turkey of late in connection with Syria, and the Turks, um, Fethullah Gulen empire has been
In Pennsylvania.
dominating
Mm-hmm.
a lot of places, Pennsylvania, Texas, the
Mm-hmm.
Harmony schools and places they're called that. And a very worrying thing that seems to be as much about sort of Turkish indoctrination as it is about STEM or anything else. But one of the things that you and I have talked about off air that I wanted particularly to address with you, at least briefly today, and hopefully at greater length on another occasion, Nicole Neily, is the Chinese Communist Party's activities in our educational system. Could you give us a flavor of the extent of what you've exposed so far and how serious a problem you think it represents?
Absolutely. This is something that was really serendipitous that came up. One of my coworkers sent her child to Thomas Jefferson High School for Science and Technology, formerly America's #1 STEM magnet school in the country, based in Fairfax, Virginia. And one of her friends had flagged just in some old annual reports that there were a lot of unusual donations to the partnership fund, the C3 kind of fundraising arm of the school, from Chinese department stores, foundations. And she said, why would they be giving money? And so we started to dig into it, and we're quickly, I mean, our jaws dropped. We identified over $1 million that went to Thomas Jefferson over a several year period. And just started to pull threads, identify that some of the gifts were closely tied to institutions linked to the Chinese military, and this was, I mean, astonishing to us, because we had in speaking to people who had graduated from the school, they said, oh yeah, this has kind of been an open secret for many years. The Chinese made these donations. They were allowed to come in and just kind of look under the hood, and have access to student projects, lesson plans. We thought, well, that's very unusual. So when we exposed all this, we went to Governor Youngkin. We said, please, we demand an investigation. Fairfax County Public Schools eventually came out and said, oh, it wasn't $1 million. Actually, it was 3.6 million. Our bad. But let's remember, there is no disclosure for K-12 schools the way there is in higher education under the Higher Education Act. And so we thought, well, if this is taking place here, is this taking place elsewhere? And my brilliant coworker, Ryan, did an investigation over the course of about a year and found that he identified 143 districts around the country that have been taking millions of dollars over the course of more than a decade. And coincidentally, many of these schools actually were located around military bases. In some cases, there were teachers that came over, schools that were given lesson plans and books. And as you know, nothing in life is free. And so this started to raise a lot of questions as to what is going on, because this is not just we want to teach children Mandarin language out of the kindness of our hearts. There's something more going on. And so
I think you've used the phrase little red classrooms as a way of sort of describing this kind of penetration. And when the Chinese provide lesson plans and curricula, we've heard a good bit about this at the university level with the Confucius Institutes, but I understand that they've been penetrating, more and more and more of the lower grades as well. And when you look at these curricula, when you look at these lesson plans, is it, just teaching science or, the hard, subjects, if you will, math and the like, or is there a level of indoctrination taking place in the social sciences or history for that matter?
Yes. Well, out of an abundance of, just to be clear, I don't speak Mandarin, so I have not personally gone through all of the curriculum. But as you alluded to with the Confucius Institute programs, what we have seen from video footage and things that have come out as that program was investigated by Secretary Pompeo and Secretary DeVos under the previous Trump administration, there have been operas of children singing homages to Chairman Mao. I mean, really jaw-dropping things where you think, as parents are sitting in the audience clapping, do they have any idea what their children are actually saying, speaking, learning? Are they really learning, as we hear from Randy Weingarten, the real truth? Are they learning the 3 T's about Tiananmen and Tibet and Taiwan? Or are they receiving a very sanitized version of history? And that, to me, is the real concern. This is quite obviously a soft power exercise. We now hear of Xi Jinping saying that he wants to bring 50,000 American high school students over to China on all expense paid junkets. This is an effort to win
Paging Governor Waltz, right?
Very much so. And so this is something that is very frightening to me. And we have sent letters through our C4 to all of the governors of the state where we have identified these programs saying, please get to the bottom of this. And frankly, these programs should be cut off. We need more states recognizing that this is a foreign hostile adversary, because under the past 4 years of the Biden administration, it has been, open for business.
Right. This may be a little out of area for you, but I know that your passion about trying to root out these kind of communist Chinese influence operations extends beyond the classroom. Talk to me a little bit about TikTok. Where do you all come down on what's being done to American kids through that highly addictive, well, I think of it as an information warfare instrument?
I agree with you completely. I think it is an information warfare tool. I mean, you look at how the algorithm is in China versus what it is here in America, driving pushing a lot of the pro-Hamas propaganda over the past year. But even before that, the fact that they refuse to sell the company to an American company, and allow us to manage the algorithm, to me speaks volumes. Any company that does misses in China knows that they have to open everything, like all the data, everything goes back and forth. And so I worry tremendously about it. I do not think, and I used to run a campus free speech organization. There is no one who, holds the First Amendment in greater esteem than me. But this is, in my mind, a national security issue. This is not a First Amendment issue.
Yeah, I'm so appreciative that you've made that point, because that's apparently what the Supreme Court is going to be weighing here on an emergency basis, as to whether to spare TikTok from having to either, sell itself to an American operating company, or lose the market here. Some 170 million users in this country. Um, and if it isn't a free speech issue, if in fact it's really about a weaponized information platform that is being used to indoctrinate, entertain, yes, but as a means really of just hooking up our kids, it is scandalous that this thing is even in business here, let alone that we're talking about protecting it as, a constitutionally consistent exercise. Nicole Neily, there's so much more to explore here with you. I hope you will come back, and that we'll have an opportunity to visit further about the important work that your Parents Defending Education, and I believe it's defendinged.org. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. Thank you so
Check it
much.
out, folks. It's vital.